In life, many people only look at the branches and forget the roots. They see success, but don't see the years of silent hard work. They see a relationship breakdown, but don't see the wounds that have accumulated over a long period. The ancients often taught that to understand something, don't just look at what's visible, but look to its roots. The theme of roots and branches is not just a simple image of trees, but also a profound philosophy of life about how to view people, life, and oneself. In today's video, we will explore why, in life, the roots determine the branches and how to build a strong foundation for the long haul. If you enjoy profound life lessons that help you see things more clearly, subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to follow more meaningful content. In life, there are images that are very simple, yet contain a profound philosophical depth. The image of roots and branches is one of them. Just by looking at a tree, we can understand a great deal about people, about growth, and about how life works. Because whether a tree stands firm, thrives, flowers, and bears fruit is not only determined by the visible branches, but also by the roots silently lying deep in the earth. Roots are the foundation, the base, the inner part that silently nourishes. They're not noisy, not ostentatious, not easily noticed. But it is precisely these roots that determine the true vitality of the entire tree. If the roots are strong, the tree can withstand strong winds, scorching sun, and harsh seasons. If the roots are weak, even a small disturbance is enough to cause the tree to sway, wither, or fall. The same is true in human life. Roots symbolize the inner self, qualities, habits, thoughts, and core values that a person carries within. These are things that aren't always immediately visible to the naked eye. No one can tell after just a few minutes of meeting someone whether they have a strong inner character, discipline, kindness, or depth. But it is precisely these qualities that truly nourish their lives from within. A person may not achieve immediate success, may not stand out immediately, may not have great accomplishments for others to see, but if their inner roots are being properly nurtured, their life will sooner or later progress in a more sustainable way. Conversely, the top is the outward manifestation, the result, the thing that others easily see. It includes success, image, words, actions, achievements, recognition, and things that quickly lead others to make judgments. In a tree, the top is the foliage, branches, flowers, and fruit. In a person's life, the top is what appears on the surface and is usually the first thing society notices. This is why people often only see the surface. The surface is easily visible, easy to assess, and easy to make an impression. People are easily attracted by appearance, status, money, manner of speaking, superficial image, or obvious achievements. A well-dressed person, confident in their speech, with a good social standing, or with many visible accomplishments, is often more easily admired. Meanwhile, things that are fundamental, such as character, inner depth, habits, discipline, or how a person faces difficulties, are not so readily apparent. Therefore, people often tend to judge very quickly based only on the surface. We see someone successful and think they must be very talented, very happy, or very worthy of emulation. We see someone who speaks well and think they must be very profound. We see someone who looks kind on the outside and think they must be kind on the inside as well. But real life often shows that a beautiful branch doesn't necessarily have strong roots. And conversely, strong roots don't necessarily mean a brilliant branch in the eyes of others. Some people appear very successful on the outside but are deeply unstable on the inside. They have a beautiful crown but thin roots. They may have status, money, and a good image, but their inner selves are fragile, easily shattered by adversity, and easily lose direction when things don't go as planned. Conversely, there are also people who may not be particularly outstanding at present, but are quietly building a very strong foundation. They live by principles, with depth, discipline, patience, and a solid intellectual base. And such people, even if they don't blossom immediately, are very difficult to be knocked down by the winds of life. That's why if you only look at the surface without understanding the roots, it's very easy to misinterpret the true nature of a situation. This is a very important lesson in how to judge people, life, and yourself. Relationships break down simply because people only love the surface of each other without ever understanding the roots. Some wrong choices happen because we are caught up in appearances without noticing what's inside that's nurturing that person. And many of our own sufferings stem from focusing only on fixing the surface, while forgetting that the roots are what need healing and rebuilding. For example, many people want to change their lives, but only focus on the superficial aspects. They want better results, greater success, more engaging communication, and a different perception of themselves. But if they still cling to old habits, outdated mindsets, old fears, and an unstable inner self, then any external changes are unlikely to be sustainable. The symptoms might be fixed for a while, but if the roots remain unchanged, sooner or later the old ways will return. For true change to occur, people must start from the roots. So that means from their way of thinking, their beliefs, their daily habits, and how they confront pain, pressure, and themselves when no one is watching. That's where the branches will ultimately grow. A person cannot have a beautiful and lasting life if their inner self is always chaotic. A person cannot go far if their foundation is weak and lacks nurturing. It's worth noting that today's society makes people even more obsessed with superficial appearances. Social media, images, achievements, self-expression, and the need to look good in front of others cause many people to unconsciously spend too much energy on beautifying the surface. They want a polished image, a successful appearance, a life that seems admirable. But while focusing on the surface, they forget that if the roots dry up, the tree will eventually collapse. Some people focus on their careers but neglect their mental health. Some care about their image but neglect their character. Some focus on their words but neglect their inner selves. Some desire admiration from others but don't truly understand what they are living for. These things may not collapse immediately, but if prolonged, the price to pay is often enormous. Because when disaster strikes, what saves a person is not the beautiful facade, but whether the roots are deep and strong enough. Ultimately, the image of roots and branches is a very insightful reminder. It reminds people not to judge things too quickly based on what is currently visible. Don't admire the branches of others too much while forgetting to look at your own roots. And don't be too impatient if your own branches aren't yet flourishing, knowing that you are quietly nurturing the roots. Because in life, the most enduring things are often not the first things that are displayed. The things that truly carry a person far are often found in the least visible places. A strong inner self, a pure character, right thinking, good habits, a heart that knows how to remain steadfast amidst change. That is the root. And when the roots are deep enough, strong enough, and well-nourished enough, the shoot will sooner or later find a way to grow. No need to rush. No need to make a fuss. No need to compare. Just take care of the roots, and life will naturally find a way to blossom with worthy results. That is one of the most profound lessons that the image of roots and shoots can teach people. In life, everyone likes to see the beautiful things at the top. Tall, wide-canopied tree with green leaves, blooming flowers, and abundant fruit always inspires admiration. But very few people stop to think that all that beauty doesn't come about naturally. To stand firm against strong winds, to live long through many harsh seasons, that tree must have deep roots, and human life is no different. To go far, to endure, to not fall, when faced with adversity, people cannot just focus on the top. They must have roots. A tree needs deep roots to stand firm. This is not only a law of nature, but also a profound lesson about how people build their lives. Roots are invisible, yet they determine the entire vitality of a tree. If the roots are shallow, the tree may remain green for a while. It may still be beautiful, and others may think it's doing well. But as soon as a real storm passes, its weakness will immediately become apparent. The tree can tilt, break, or fall down in a single night. The same applies to people. Those who want to go far must possess inner strength, discipline, and clear values. These are the roots. Inner strength is the ability to stand firm against pressure, failure, and the vicissitudes of life. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done even when no one is pushing you and you lack inspiration. Clear values mean knowing what you are living for, what is important, and what you cannot sacrifice just to be seen favorably by others. These things are not flashy, not easily shown off, and do not create a quick impression like outward appearance or words. But it is precisely these that keep a person from collapsing when life's storms rage. The problem is that many people spend most of their energy on the surface. They focus on image, on presentation, on how to appear successful, profound, and admirable. They invest heavily in what others can see, but rarely truly sit down to build the foundation. Therefore, the exterior may look beautiful, but the interior lacks roots. And without roots, everything may look beautiful, but it's very easy to collapse when faced with storms. There's a very familiar story in modern life about this type of person. There's a young person who knows how to cultivate a strong personal image. They dress impeccably, speak confidently, communicate well, and always know how to make a good impression on others. Wherever they appear, they leave a very strong first impression. Others often think they are a person with depth, confidence, and a bright future. On social media, their image is also very appealing. Everything is presented in a neat, intelligent, and captivating way. Initially, things seemed quite favorable. They had many connections, received attention, were invited to numerous opportunities, and were often highly regarded from the first meeting. But then, over time, the underlying issues began to surface. When entering jobs that require real perseverance, they lack discipline. They are easily enthusiastic at first, but quickly become discouraged when things lose their novelty. Under pressure, they lack the inner strength to maintain composure. Even a slight criticism easily offends them. Failure alone can cause them to lose direction. In long-term relationships, their lack of sincerity gradually becomes apparent. They know how to speak well, but don't always live up to their words. They make a good impression in the short term, but the longer you interact with them, the more you sense a clear gap within. And then, what used to be their greatest advantage, their positive image, began to falter. Those who once trusted them became wary. Opportunities that had opened up began to close. Not because they suddenly became less capable, but because over time, the branches couldn't forever conceal weak roots. The inner shortcomings would eventually show in their work ethic, their behavior, their reactions to difficulties, and their ability to persevere in life. This story isn't meant to judge anyone, but to remind us of a very true truth. The branches may get you attention quickly, but only the roots will help you stand firm for the long term. A person might impress others a few times initially, but if they lack character, discipline, and sincerity, it will be very difficult for them to maintain trust later on. Life isn't just about shining moments in front of others. It's also about the quiet days, unseen by anyone, where a person reveals their true self. That's why wise people don't just focus on the surface. They can still be well-groomed, still learn how to communicate effectively, still build a positive image, but they don't forget the roots. They understand that if they only try to appear strong without truly becoming strong from within, sooner or later, they will be unable to maintain it. Nurturing a person's roots is a slow and unpretentious job. It doesn't produce immediate results, doesn't instantly impress others, but it's the most important work. Roots are nurtured by cultivating inner strength, not running away from difficulties, maintaining discipline on unmotivated days, living authentically, even when no one is watching, and building clear values so as not to be easily swayed by comparisons, ostentation, or superficial societal norms. A person with deep roots doesn't need much fanfare. They may not stand out at first, not the type to make a quick impression, but the longer they are around, the more trustworthy they become. They aren't easily discouraged by criticism. They aren't easily lost because of a few failures. They aren't easily alienated by the desire for recognition. They possess a unique resilience, and it is this resilience that takes them far. Ultimately, the true beauty of a tree lies not only in how tall it is, but also in how long it can withstand strong winds. Life is the same. What is truly valuable is not how many people you have impressed, but how much of yourself you retain when the storms come. Therefore, if you want a sustainable life, don't just ask how to look better, but ask how to be stronger. Don't just focus on the visible surface, but patiently nurture the roots that no one may yet see. Because in the end, it is the roots that will determine whether you have the strength to stand firm and grow amidst the storms of life. In life, there are people who don't appear like a dazzling light, but rather like a persistent flame. They don't immediately turn heads, don't make a strong impression at first encounters, and aren't particularly good at showing off. But the longer you get along with them, the more you encounter them, the more you realize that these quiet individuals are the most enduring. They are like a tree that doesn't bloom brilliantly too early, but its roots grow deeper, stronger, and healthier with each passing year. There's a type of person in life that's easy to overlook at first glance. They live quite quietly, without much fanfare, rarely talking much about their goals or ambitions. They don't like to show off. They quietly work, quietly learn, quietly improve themselves, and quietly hold on to what they believe is right. In the eyes of others, they may not be the most outstanding person in a short period. But what's remarkable is that over time they don't falter, or they don't break down because of the upheavals that many others can't handle. The longer they live, the more stable they become, the deeper they go, and the more they work, the more trusted and respected they are. That's the kind of person who takes care of the roots before thinking about the branches. There's a very relatable story about this type of person. A young man began his career in an environment where everyone was trying to stand out and get attention. Around him, many people were excellent speakers, skilled at image building, quick at networking, and adept at highlighting themselves. Meanwhile, he was quite reserved, wasn't good at making himself the center of attention, wasn't used to showing off his achievements, and didn't have a habit of talking much about what he was striving for. But what few people notice is that he has always quietly and seriously cultivated himself. He maintains a regular schedule, works responsibly, doesn't make many promises, but once he takes on a task, he strives to complete it thoroughly. When he doesn't know something, he learns. When he makes a mistake, he corrects it. When faced with unpleasant situations, he doesn't react impulsively, but usually chooses to remain silent and think things through first. In relationships, he's not so charming that everyone likes him instantly, but he is kind, considerate, and maintains sincerity in his dealings with others. In the early years, he wasn't the most prominent. At times, he was even considered slow, lacking in opportunism, and less sharp than those who were more expressive. But as time passed, things gradually changed. Those who were initially brilliant began to reveal their limitations. Some faltered due to a lack of discipline, some stumbled because of an inflated ego, some lost credibility due to a lack of sincerity, some collapsed because they lacked inner strength when adversity struck. As for him, who had once been quiet and unremarkable, he grew stronger and stronger. Others began to trust him more, appreciate him more, and entrust him with more important tasks. This wasn't because he suddenly became more skilled overnight, but because what he had quietly nurtured over a long period had finally become a deep enough root system to support his entire life. And when that time came, he didn't need to try to shine. His own steadfastness created its own light. That story illustrates a profound truth. Life doesn't always reward diligently and quickly. Those who live quietly uphold moral principles, diligently do what is right, and persistently cultivate themselves may sometimes take a considerable amount of time before their results are clearly visible. But that doesn't mean they are lagging behind. It's quite possible they are simply following a deeper and more sustainable path of development. They don't bloom early, but once they've established themselves, they are very difficult to fall. That's when we understand something even more important. The root of a person is their character. One can learn skills, hone communication skills, build an image, and achieve many outward accomplishments. But if one's character is weak, all of that will sooner or later become problematic. Character is the foundation that keeps a person from straying when faced with power, money, fame, or temptation. It determines who we are when no one is watching. When given the opportunity to deceive without being detected, do we choose the right path? When faced with immediate gains, are we willing to sacrifice integrity? When in power, do we maintain moderation and common sense? These are very subtle questions, yet they determine a person's long-term path. Talent can propel someone forward quickly, but character is what determines whether they can go far and sustainably. Many people rise to great heights through ability, intelligence, or sharp wit. But then, many of them bring themselves down simply because their inner foundation isn't strong enough. When a person lacks character, power easily leads to arrogance. Money easily leads them astray. Admiration easily leads them to have illusions about themselves. Temptation easily leads them to betray the principles they once upheld. And once the roots are crooked, even the most beautiful branches are unlikely to last. They may continue to shine for a while longer, but that is only the outward appearance of a tree that is rotting from within. Conversely, a person with a strong character usually maintains their integrity well when life begins to offer them more. They don't easily forget who they are just because they receive more praise. They don't easily lose their kindness just because they gain more power. They don't easily betray what is right for short-term gain. His character is like a silent anchor that keeps a person from being swept away when the waves of life become stronger. What is valuable is that character is not built by words or images. It is built by very small choices each day. By whether or not to keep one's word, by whether or not to live honestly, by whether or not to be considerate, by whether or not to do what is right, even when it is more difficult, by whether or not to dare to refuse what is wrong, even if it could benefit oneself. All of these things silently form the deepest roots in a person. Ultimately, what truly defines a person's lasting success isn't how prominent they were in the past. A person might not shine immediately, but if they are quietly nurturing the right roots, they will grow in a very reliable way. It's a little slower, a little quieter, but much more solid. And perhaps, in a world increasingly focused on superficial things, the most valuable lesson remains to patiently nurture the roots. Care for your character before your image. Preserve your foundation before you think about blossoming, because once your roots are deep enough, life will find a way for your branches to grow naturally and sustainably. In life, there's a simple truth that not everyone is willing to face. That is, a person's life is rarely determined by a few moments of brilliance, but is largely built upon small, repeated things every day. Many people still think success comes from talent, luck, a great opportunity, or a timely breakthrough. Those things may play a role, but without a solid foundation, everything is difficult to sustain. And that foundation, if you look closely, is often not found in grand things, but in the very ordinary habits of daily life. The roots of life are daily habits. This is an extremely accurate analogy for how people grow or gradually lose themselves without even realizing it. Habits are the most subtle, yet the most powerful shaping force. They aren't loud or impactful immediately, but little by little, they build character. Mindset, energy, health, discipline, and even a person's future. No one succeeds through a few moments of sudden bursts of inspiration. A person can't become profound just by reading for 3 days. They can't become disciplined just by waking up early for a week. They can't achieve a stable life just by trying for a short time. Great results are often built upon small, repeated daily habits. It's these seemingly small things, how you wake up, how you use your time, how you react to your emotions, how you keep your promises to yourself, how you learn, rest, talk, and work, that are silently laying the foundation for your life. There's a truth many people dislike hearing. To change the symptoms, you must first address the roots. And those roots lie in the very small things we do every day. Many people want to be more confident, but each day they live in procrastination, avoidance, and lack of discipline. Many people want a better life, but their habits remain the same: disorganized, emotionally driven, and letting time slip away unconsciously. Many people want different results, but repeat their old ways of living, then wonder why their lives aren't changing. In reality, the branches of a person are always the honest result of the roots they have nurtured. If you live each day without a solid foundation, it is difficult to expect a future with depth and stability. If you are quietly building good habits each day, even if the results are not immediately apparent, the branches will gradually change as well. But the question is, why do so many people want the sweet fruits, but refuse to nurture the roots? The honest answer is that people often prefer results to the process. Everyone wants quick results, recognition, a better life, to be more skilled, healthier, and more peaceful. But not everyone has the patience to build a solid foundation, because the foundation is often not appealing. It doesn't give an immediate feeling of excitement. It doesn't create big changes in just a day or two. It requires repetition, quiet effort, and sometimes even boredom. People are often attracted to things that seem faster: promise of instant change, a powerful inspiration, a visible breakthrough, a dazzling image of someone else's success. We easily get caught up in the superficial aspects of others, forgetting that behind them lies a long-standing root system nurtured over a very long period, which we don't see. And because we don't see the roots, we easily delude ourselves into thinking that success can be achieved without the price of perseverance. That's why so many people keep starting, but don't get very far. They have strong motivation in the beginning, but because they don't build habits, all their efforts only last for the short term. They want quick changes, so they often choose things that give them immediate excitement instead of small but lasting efforts. And then, when the results don't come quickly enough, they lose patience, give up, and revert to their old ways. It's not because they lack the ability to change, but because they're trying to reap the rewards before the roots have been nurtured long enough. Life is actually very fair in this respect. The branches can only accurately reflect what the roots have accumulated. You cannot expect a peaceful mind if you nourish it daily with chaos, comparison, and unconscious consumption. You cannot expect a healthy body if you live each day without sleep, exercise, and with an unbalanced diet. You cannot expect a secure future if you procrastinate, indulge, and lack commitment to yourself every day. Every branch is telling the story of the roots. And the valuable thing is that if people understand this, they will be less impatient with their journey. Because often we are sad not because we are going in the wrong direction, because we are looking too much at the branches and not seeing the value of nurturing the roots. There are very real changes happening inside a person, even though nothing outwardly seems to be happening. Someone who tries to keep their word to themselves every day may not succeed immediately, but they are building discipline. Someone who tries to speak more kindly every day may not have perfect relationships immediately, but they are cultivating character. Someone who tries to learn a little more each day may not see big results immediately, but they are silently changing their mindset and abilities. Those little things are not insignificant. They're the roots. Roots always need time before the branches can show noticeable change. Perhaps one of the greatest milestones in a person's life is when they stop demanding that life blossom immediately and begin to seriously commit to small daily habits. At that point, they no longer live solely for fleeting inspiration. They begin to understand that the future isn't built on momentary emotions, but on consistent, sustained effort. They become less obsessed with superficial aspects and begin to appreciate the roots, even if they are quiet, slow, and largely unnoticed. Ultimately, a person's life doesn't change in a single day. It changes in how that person lives each day. If today you're aiming for a different kind of top, don't just look at the results. Look back at your roots. Ask yourself what you're nurturing each day, what you're repeating, what kind of person you're silently becoming through your very small habits. Because in the end, what lifts you up or drags you down isn't a few moments of explosive success, what you repeat silently for long enough. And that's why those who truly change their lives are always the ones who dare to go back and nurture the roots, even before the branches have a chance to bloom. In life, people are often easily swayed by what they see on the surface. Sweet words, timely attention, a hearty meal, a happy family photo, a seemingly perfect relationship. These are all just the surface. They have value, they evoke emotions, they make people believe everything is fine. But if you only look at the surface without examining the roots, many seemingly good relationships can crumble at any moment. Conversely, there are relationships that may not seem particularly striking or colorful at first glance, but are enduring and warm in a precious way because they have a solid and strong foundation. The roots and branches of relationships are a profound lesson that becomes more deeply ingrained as we mature. A lasting relationship cannot rely solely on sweet words or outward appearances. Words are easily spoken when things are going smoothly. Care is also easily expressed before conflict, challenges, days of fatigue, disappointment, or hurt. But whether a relationship lasts is not determined by what appears beautiful, but by what lies beneath that beauty. What keeps people together in the long run is sincerity, trust, respect, and how they treat each other during difficult times. That's the root of a relationship. Sincerity is the first and most important thing. A relationship may begin with feelings, compatibility, and superficial cuteness and attraction. But without sincerity, it's very difficult to go far. Sincerity isn't always about saying sweet things, but about being genuine in your presence, in your care, and in holding on to each other with an unpretentious attitude. People may not be perfect. They may not be great at expressing themselves. But if they are sincere, that relationship still has a foundation to nurture. Trust is the next root. Out! Without trust, all beautiful outward appearances become fragile. A person may say they love you very much, but if they don't create a sense of security and trustworthiness, the person beside them will always live in insecurity. Trust doesn't come from beautiful promises, but from long-term consistency, doing what you say, being consistent and reliable, not making the other person guess or speculate, not creating a feeling of being close and distant, real and fake. A relationship can lack many things, but if it lacks trust, it will be very difficult to stand firm. Respect is also an indispensable foundation. Many relationships break down not because love has faded, but because of a lack of respect. When respect is gone, words become sharper, attitudes become more dismissive, and small hurts begin to accumulate into a large distance. Respect means that no matter how close you are, you know how to speak appropriately. No matter how familiar you are, you don't take the other person's feelings for granted. Even in conflicts, you don't use words to hurt each other's dignity. This is something very subtle, but extremely important for maintaining a lasting relationship. And perhaps the most obvious root of any relationship is how people treat each other in difficult times. When things are good, everyone can be kind. When things are going well, everyone can be caring. But when people are tired, stressed, disagreeing, hurt, or in a precarious situation, that's when their true nature is revealed. A person might be very gentle when things are going well, but become cold or harsh when the other person is vulnerable. A person might be very affectionate in everyday life, but disappear when the relationship reaches a point where presence is most needed. At that point, no matter how beautiful the branches are, they cannot save a weak root. This is especially true within families. The roots and branches of a family are a topic worth contemplating, as many people believe that simply being together is enough. But in reality, living under the same roof doesn't necessarily mean being close. Laughing and talking in front of each other doesn't necessarily mean understanding each other. And a seemingly peaceful exterior doesn't necessarily mean a family has a healthy foundation. Many families appear stable on the outside, but are deeply fraught with internal divisions due to a lack of listening and understanding. This is a very common reality. Some families seem complete from the outside, living together harmoniously, seemingly without major problems. But inside, each person lives like an island. Parents don't truly understand their children. Spouses no longer truly listen to each other. Siblings, though physically close, are emotionally distant. Important conversations go unspoken. Need to be understood emotions remain untouched. Small wounds accumulate over the years and no one truly sits down to reflect on them. It's the kind of family where the top is quite stable, but the roots are gradually withering. And when the inner roots aren't nurtured by listening and understanding, the outward peace easily becomes just a prolonged silence. At some point, that distance can turn into coldness, then into a real estrangement, and no one knows exactly when it started. Conversely, there are also families who aren't overly wealthy, but are very warm because they are built on a foundation of love and respect. They may not have a perfect life in the eyes of others. Their house might not be huge, their money might not be abundant, and their circumstances might not be perfect. But within that family, there is something very precious, the feeling of being listened to, respected, and being able to be oneself without fear of rejection. Such families often possess a kind of warmth that is difficult to describe. Not because they don't have problems, but because when problems arise, they don't turn their backs on each other. That's the true root of a family. It's not about outward appearances. It's not about whether the meal is beautifully presented. It's not about what others see and praise. It's about whether, when problems arise, family members still know how to sit down and listen to each other. When someone is feeling down, do the others know how to speak more gently? When differences occur, do they still maintain respect? Ultimately, the strength of a family doesn't lie in its outward appearance, but in its inner core. And that's true for all other relationships in life. What keeps people together for the long term is never just the superficial beauty. It's the feeling of being safe, respected, trusted, and loved in a way that's beautiful not only when things are calm, but also genuine when storms come. Therefore, if you want to maintain a relationship, don't just focus on the surface. Don't just worry about saying the right things, presenting yourself nicely, or making it look good to others. Go back and nurture the roots. Nurture how you listen. Nurture sincerity. Nurture trust. Nurture respect. Nurture how you stay together through difficult times. Because in the end, what keeps a relationship strong isn't its outward appearance, but whether its roots are deep enough to hold it together. In life, Many people feel exhausted, not because they don't try, but because they constantly deal with the symptoms without addressing the root cause. The problem subsides for a while, only to reappear in a different form. A relationship that seemed stable repeats the same old hurt. A bad habit that was finally resolved a few days ago reverts to its old ways. A negative emotion that just passed soon reappears. This is because people often only treat the symptoms, not the root cause. And without seeing the root, it's very difficult to truly solve the problem. The method of looking at a problem from its root, rather than just its symptoms, is a crucial way of life that everyone needs to learn as they mature. When faced with a problem, don't just ask what's happening, but ask why it's happening. The first question helps us see the manifestation. The second question is what begins to lead us to the essence. And between these two perspectives lies a vast gap in the quality of understanding and the ability to change. For example, someone who frequently loses their temper might think their problem is simply anger. But if you look deeper, behind that anger might be feelings of disrespect, long-standing hurt, suppressed pressure, or a reactive habit formed from the past. Simply trying to stop getting angry without understanding what's subtly driving those emotions is difficult to change sustainably, because anger is only the symptom. The roots lie beneath. In many cases, behind an outburst of anger lies hurt. This is a truth worth contemplating. Some people react strongly, not necessarily because the immediate issue is too big, but because it touches a pre-existing sensitive spot. A seemingly ordinary remark can trigger their outburst, not because the remark is particularly serious, but because they carry an old, unhealed wound. If you only look at the surface, you might think this person is hot-tempered or irritable. But if you look at the root, you'll see they may be suffering in a way they themselves can't quite name. This is also true for failure. Many people only see an unsatisfactory result and then blame themselves for their incompetence or the circumstances. But if you calmly look deeper, behind a failure may be a long-standing bad habit. It could be repeated procrastination. It could be a lack of discipline in work. It could be short-term thinking. It could be always avoiding difficult tasks. If you only focus on fixing the symptoms by promising yourself you'll try harder next time, but don't change the root cause, the habit and way of life, that failure is very likely to repeat itself. This is the greatest value of looking at the root of the problem. Only when we see the root cause can we truly solve the problem. We no longer just chase after the outward manifestations, but begin to reach where the problems are silently arising. And that's when change has a chance to become more sustainable. However, looking at the roots isn't always easy. Branches are usually much clearer and more visible. The roots, on the other hand, require people to stop, observe, be honest with themselves, and have the patience to dig deep. Many people don't do that because it's unpleasant. There will be times when we have to admit that the problem isn't with others as we once thought, but with how we react, with the false beliefs we hold, or with the habits we've repeated for too long. But it is precisely this honesty that leads to real change. Having understood the importance of roots, the next crucial question is how to build roots for oneself. If we want a stable life, we can't just wait for things to naturally improve one day. We must proactively nurture our roots every day. And it's worth noting that these roots are often built from things that aren't flashy or noisy, but have a profound nourishing power. To have a stable life, first and foremost, start by cultivating the right mindset. Mindset is the root of many decisions and reactions in life. A person may try very hard, but if their thinking is always distorted, extreme, or always views life negatively, it will be very difficult to live lightly and go far. Cultivating the right mindset means learning to see problems more comprehensively, being less blame-oriented, less victim-oriented, and more responsible for one's own life. It also means learning to see difficulties as part of growth, instead of viewing every setback as proof that life is against you. Next is discipline. This is one of the most important roots, but also the one many people fear the most. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself to live rigidly, but rather the ability to maintain what's necessary even when you're not inspired. A person's life isn't defined by the days they're most enthusiastic, but by the ordinary days they do what needs to be done. Discipline provides a backbone for life. It keeps us from being swept away by fleeting emotions. It helps us build lasting results, instead of just living on short-term efforts. Cultivating gratitude is also a very important route. Many people think gratitude is something weak or merely a slogan, but in reality, it is a very powerful inner capacity. When people are grateful, they live less in spiritual deprivation, compare themselves less to others, become less resentful of life, and feel less like they are always being wronged. Gratitude provides a foundation for the mind. It doesn't diminish the desire for growth, but rather helps people grow without being burned by constant dissatisfaction. Another essential root is learning to control your emotions. No one lives without sadness, anger, disappointment, anxiety, or hurt. But those who live stable lives are those who don't let emotions drag them too far from what is right. Controlling emotions doesn't mean suppressing them, but understanding what you're feeling. Knowing why you're feeling that way, and choosing a reaction that doesn't further damage things. This is an extremely important skill if you want to live a deep and lasting life. And finally, living authentically is a beautiful and powerful root. In a world easily swept away by images, appearances, and social roles, living authentically is a precious form of inner strength. Being sincere with others gives relationships a genuine foundation. Being sincere with yourself prevents you from living in a state of separation between your outward and inner selves. A life is only truly stable when it is built on what is genuine. Ultimately, these things aren't flashy. They don't generate quick applause. They don't make you stand out instantly, and the results aren't always immediately visible. But they are the silent roots that nourish your entire life. And if you're patient enough to nurture those roots, your life will gradually change in a very real, lasting, and profound way. Because in the end, what keeps a person standing is not the outward appearance they try to show off, but the roots they silently nurture every day. In life, everyone hopes for a better outcome. Some want smoother careers, higher incomes, and improved skills. Others want more lasting relationships, a more harmonious family life, and smoother connections. Still others simply wish to be less tired, less stressed, and less burdened by the feeling of living aimlessly without seeing where life is going. These desires are very real and very human. But the point is that not everyone changes in the right places. Many people are so impatient with superficial changes that they forget that what truly determines their lives lies in the roots. This is the most important practical lesson that the theme of roots and branches offers. Today you are hoping for better results in your work, relationships, or life. Don't just focus on fixing the branches, because the branches are the most visible. They are also the easiest to get caught up in. We see stagnation in our work and immediately want to change environments. We see a tiring relationship and immediately think we're with the wrong person. We see life as a dead end and quickly conclude that circumstances are not working in our favor. These things may sometimes be partly true. But if we only stop there, we easily make mistakes in fixing the root. Let's look back at the root of the problem. This isn't easy, as it forces us to stop and be more honest with ourselves. Perhaps what you need to change isn't external circumstances, but rather your mindset, habits, or inner self. Perhaps the reason your career isn't progressing isn't just because the company isn't good, but also because of your time management, your approach to challenges, your learning style, or your lack of discipline. Perhaps the reason a relationship keeps hurting isn't just the other person, but also your communication style, your boundaries, or old wounds you haven't truly examined. Perhaps the burden you feel in life isn't just your circumstances, but also because you've accumulated too much fatigue, comparison, fear, and false beliefs about yourself. Many people change repeatedly without seeing any improvement, simply because they only address the symptoms without touching the root cause. They change jobs but carry on their old ways of living. They enter new relationships but still carry old wounds and reactions. They set new goals but maintain old habits. Therefore, even though the external environment changes, the feeling of stagnation within keeps returning in different forms. That's why wise people don't just observe what's happening, but also constantly ask themselves, what's underlying that's causing it? They don't rush to blame life or others, but instead turn inward to observe themselves. Not to self-blame, but to understand where they need to improve. This is a very profound kind of maturity, because instead of trying to control the entire external world, they begin to seriously rebuild their inner world. And that's where the most lasting changes are created. In the workplace, Someone who focuses on their roots won't just ask how to get results faster, but also how they're living and working each day. Are they learning enough? Are they procrastinating? Are they lacking discipline? Are they letting their emotions control them too much? In relationships, someone who focuses on their roots won't just hope for change in their partner, but will also reflect on how they love, how they speak, how they hold on, and how they heal unspoken wounds. In life in general, someone who focuses on their roots will understand that a healthy top cannot exist if the roots remain dry and barren. This is also where we touch upon the deeper meaning of the theme of roots and branches. Roots and branches are not just an image to describe success or failure. It's a very profound philosophy of life. It teaches people not to be too quick to believe the surface. Don't be too captivated by what appears before your eyes. And don't panic if the branches aren't as beautiful as you'd like. Because what truly determines a person's long-term success isn't their current appearance, but how their roots are being nurtured. To have a lasting life, don't just chase after what's on the surface. This is a crucial lesson to remember in an era where people are increasingly caught up in superficial things. Social media makes everyone see more of others' achievements than their process. Society puts pressure on everyone to maintain their image, position, accomplishments, and the need to appear presentable. Gradually, many people begin to live as if the surface is everything. They care more about their image than their character. They care more about results than habits.
Ow.
They care more about recognition than the truth within. And then, when life throws challenges their way, they realize they've neglected the roots for too long. Nurture the roots, because all great and lasting things begin with what is quiet, deep, and rarely seen. A strong inner self isn't built in a few days. A beautiful character doesn't come from a few eloquent words. Stable life doesn't appear naturally just because we desire it. All lasting things grow from small, repeated things in silence. From how you think when faced with difficulties, from how you live when no one is watching, from how you keep your word to yourself, from how you choose what is right even when no one forces you, from how you nourish your mind each day with what you read, think, believe, and allow to remain within you. Wise people don't just fix the branches, they always know to nurture the roots. They aren't overly impatient with results, so they don't easily overlook the foundation. They understand that the taller a tree wants to grow, the deeper it must penetrate the soil. Similarly, the further a person wants to go, the stronger their roots must be. They don't disdain small things. They don't underestimate repetitive habits. They don't belittle their inner self, their thinking, their character, or their daily way of life, because they know that all of these things are where life is silently determined. Ultimately, if you're feeling disappointed today about the top of your plant, don't be quick to despair. See it as a reminder to return to the roots. Perhaps this isn't the time to force it to bloom immediately, but rather a time to quietly nurture the roots. And if you're patient enough to do that, one day your top will naturally change in a way that's genuine, beautiful, and enduring. Because in life, lasting things are rarely built on the surface. They always begin from what is deep, quiet, and rarely seen. And that is precisely the deepest wisdom that the philosophy of roots and branches leaves for humanity.